Hi there and welcome to this video about commenting standards. In this video in particular we're looking at inline comments for variables and also looking at comments that describe or try to explain the flow of our program. Now if we take a look at the screen here, I've got like an introductory comment or a boilerplate comment there at the top for the whole app. And then I'm into a section where I declare some global variables and constants and things. Now in that situation we can see what I've done is each of my variables I've tried to explain, and I do that with what's called an inline comment, meaning there's a comment actually included on the same line as the variable where it's been declared. Now one of the things you try and do with that in terms of formatting and clarity is to try and make sure that your comments all start at the same tab stop, so we can see all of these line up down the screen there, and that makes it easier for you to find the values, as opposed to, let's say, if they were sort of done like this where you've got them sort of, you know, similar distance away from each thing there, so it makes it easier for the reader to see them if they're all at the same tab stop. So just moving these back across. Right. So that's the inline comments. That's for variables, and the whole purpose there really is just to make it clear so that when someone looks and finds a variable in your code, they're able to look back at where that is. Now in this case I've got these as my global and constant variables here at the top, but as an example, if I just go a bit further down into some of the rest of my code, let's find a section here, there we go. Alright, so inside of a function I have a local variable here, and again I've placed an inline comment there to describe it. Now the other part of this is to do with showing or explaining the flow of your program where necessary. Now if we take a look at the rest of this function here, okay, we can see that I've got a situation here. It says, sorry, a for loop where it says for alien count equals 1 to 40. Okay, now what I'm doing here is it's saying, right, well, I'm explaining what this loop is actually doing. So it says loop through the active aliens to check for collision, or I should say for collisions. Okay, and then inside of the loop it says, well, I'm going to check for a collision, so it's explaining that. Notice how this isn't inline now, this is above. Okay, so it's inline where we do it for a variable, like so. Yeah, but when we're actually describing the flow of our program in some way, then we use the comments just above what it is we're doing. Okay, and so we check for a collision. Then it's saying, well, if the return value is true, i.e. there is a collision, so it says if there is a collision, yeah, and then, I mean, I could quite possibly place that just above there actually, but so if there is a collision, and then we go through the different bits here, and it's explaining, well, I need to hide the alien and the bullet, load the explode image for the alien, and so in English I'm trying to sort of make it quite clear what I'm actually doing, particularly when we're talking about, you know, these sorts of things. So I've got image draw here, and I've got this very sort of strange, complicated stuff going on here with well, different arrays and what their values are. So it's just explaining what that is so that it sort of makes sense to someone else if they were looking at it. Okay, so this is the idea about being able to describe the flow of your program so that someone else can actually understand what's going on. Now again, we don't need to overdo it. As an example, I've got a GFX show here. Now, you know, that should be quite obvious what that is. I don't necessarily need to go overboard as to, you know, what that is. It's more where I'm doing things with different functions that might not necessarily make sense to someone else who was looking at it. Okay, and you know, so don't overdo it. It's about trying to strike the right balance between making your code easy to understand and but not cluttering it up too much. Difficult balance to find sometimes, but that's the challenge, if you like, with regards to good and useful comments for your programs.